Question 1. Assessment of the Qalam University Katsina Admissions Committee's responsibility when an applicant for the upcoming entrance examination submits academic transcripts that appear to have inconsistencies with their stated academic history, raising concerns about their eligibility. Option A. The committee should immediately reject the applicant's application without further investigation, citing the inconsistencies as definitive proof of ineligibility according to Qalam University Katsina's strict admission policies. Option B. The committee should meticulously verify the submitted academic transcripts against the applicant's previous educational records and university admission guidelines, seeking clarification from the applicant or their former institutions if necessary, before making a final decision on their eligibility for the entrance examination. Option C. The committee should proceed with admitting the applicant to the entrance examination, assuming the inconsistencies are minor and the applicant's potential outweighs the need for strict verification, to avoid delaying the admissions process. Option D. The committee should contact the applicant's referees to inquire about the discrepancies in their academic records, bypassing direct communication with the applicant or their former institutions. The correct answer is B. The committee should meticulously verify the submitted academic transcripts against the applicant's previous educational records and university admission guidelines, seeking clarification from the applicant or their former institutions if necessary, before making a final decision on their eligibility for the entrance examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The admissions committee must navigate this situation with utmost diligence, ensuring that any decision made is grounded in established university regulations and ethical principles. The core of the challenge lies in upholding the integrity of the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination process, while also considering the applicant's circumstances fairly. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documents against the stated requirements of the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination, specifically focusing on the authenticity and completeness of the academic records. This approach is correct because it directly adheres to the Qalam University Katsina's established admission policies and guidelines, which mandate that all applicants must provide verifiable and accurate documentation. The university's regulatory framework, as outlined in its admission prospectus and examination guidelines, prioritizes transparency and honesty in the application process. Any deviation from these requirements, without proper justification or adherence to established appeal procedures, would undermine the fairness and credibility of the entrance examination. An incorrect approach would be to overlook the discrepancy in the academic records due to the applicant's perceived potential or the urgency of their application. This is ethically flawed as it bypasses the established verification procedures, potentially admitting a candidate who does not meet the fundamental academic prerequisites. This action violates the principle of equal opportunity and fairness to other applicants who have meticulously followed the stated requirements. Furthermore, it sets a dangerous precedent, suggesting that university regulations can be circumvented, thereby eroding the overall academic standards and reputation of Qalam University Katsina. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application without allowing the applicant an opportunity to explain the discrepancy or provide supplementary documentation, if the university's regulations permit such a process. While upholding regulations is crucial, a rigid and unyielding stance without considering due process, if available within the university's framework, can be seen as procedurally unfair. This approach fails to acknowledge that genuine errors or misunderstandings can occur, and that a reasonable opportunity for clarification is often a component of fair administrative practice. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the Qalam University Katsina's admission regulations and the specific requirements for the entrance examination. This involves meticulously examining the applicant's submission against these established criteria. If a discrepancy is identified, the next step is to consult the university's internal policies regarding such issues, which may include provisions for requesting further information, conducting interviews, or initiating an investigation. The decision should be based on evidence and adherence to the established regulatory framework, ensuring that the process is fair, transparent, and consistent for all applicants. If the regulations allow for an appeal or clarification process, this should be followed diligently. Ultimately, the decision must prioritize the integrity of the Qalam University, Katsina's academic standards, and the fairness of its entrance examination process. Question 2. Which approach would be most appropriate for the Qalam University Katsina Admissions Committee when reviewing an applicant's submission for the entrance exam, where a minor, easily correctable administrative error, e.g., a transposed digit in a year on a supporting document, is identified, but all other qualifications appear to be met? Option A. Immediately reject the application due to the identified error, as all submitted documents must be flawless. Option B. Admit the applicant but impose a mandatory, unrelated remedial course as a penalty for the error. Option C. Proceed with admitting the applicant without any further inquiry or correction, assuming the error is insignificant. Option D. Initiate a process to verify the correct information with the applicant, and if confirmed, proceed with the application review based on the corrected details, while documenting the process. The correct answer is A. Immediately reject the application due to the identified error, as all submitted documents must be flawless. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance academic integrity with the university's admission policies, specifically concerning the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. The admissions committee must make a judgment call that upholds the fairness and credibility of the examination process, while also considering the applicant's circumstances. Careful consideration is required to ensure that any decision made is consistent with the established rules and ethical standards of the university. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's documentation against the stated requirements of the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. This includes verifying the authenticity of submitted credentials and assessing whether any discrepancies, such as a minor error in a date, fundamentally undermine the applicant's eligibility or the integrity of their application. The justification for this approach lies in adhering to the university's admission regulations, which are designed to ensure a fair and equitable selection process for all candidates. It prioritizes a systematic and evidence-based evaluation, preventing arbitrary decisions and maintaining trust in the examination system. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application based solely on the minor discrepancy without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that human error can occur and that a more nuanced assessment might be warranted. Such an approach could be perceived as overly rigid and lacking in due process, potentially leading to the exclusion of a deserving candidate. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the discrepancy entirely and admit the applicant without proper verification. This undermines the importance of accurate documentation and could set a precedent for future leniency, compromising the integrity of the admission process and potentially violating the spirit of the examination's requirements. A third incorrect approach would be to admit the applicant, but then impose an arbitrary penalty unrelated to the discrepancy, such as a mandatory remedial course. This lacks a clear regulatory basis and is not a proportionate response to a minor administrative error. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific rules and guidelines of the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. They should then gather all relevant information, including the applicant's submitted documents and any supporting evidence. A critical evaluation of the information against the established criteria is essential. If ambiguities or minor issues arise, a process for seeking clarification or further investigation should be initiated. The decision should be based on objective evidence and consistent application of the university's policies, ensuring fairness and transparency. Question 3. Implementation of a fair and transparent admission process for prospective students at Qalam University Katsina requires careful consideration of assessment methodologies. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of equitable evaluation and academic merit for the university's entrance examination? Option A. Admission based primarily on letters of recommendation from influential individuals, irrespective of the applicant's performance in the entrance examination. Option B. Allowing applicants to retake the entrance examination multiple times until they achieve a satisfactory score, without any limit or clear policy on such retakes. Option C. Prioritizing applicants who demonstrate significant financial capacity or potential for future donations to the university, regardless of their examination scores. Option D, a holistic review that considers the applicant's performance in the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination, their academic transcripts, and any other criteria explicitly outlined in the university's official admission guidelines. The correct answer is D, a holistic review that considers the applicant's performance in the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination, their academic transcripts, and any other criteria explicitly outlined in the university's official admission guidelines. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles governing university admissions, specifically within the context of Qalam University Katsina's entrance examination framework. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate and ethically sound method for assessing an applicant's suitability, ensuring fairness and adherence to established guidelines. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between methods that uphold academic integrity and those that might compromise it or violate procedural fairness. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation of the applicant's academic record, performance in the entrance examination, and potentially other relevant criteria as stipulated by Qalam University Katsina's admission policies. This method is correct because it aligns with the fundamental purpose of an entrance examination, to objectively measure an applicant's preparedness and potential for success in higher education. It ensures a standardized and equitable assessment process, minimizing bias and promoting meritocracy. Adherence to the university's published admission criteria and regulations is paramount, ensuring transparency and accountability. An incorrect approach that relies solely on personal recommendations without objective assessment fails because it introduces subjectivity and potential for favoritism, undermining the principle of equal opportunity. This bypasses the established examination process designed to provide a standardized measure of academic capability. Another incorrect approach that involves prioritizing applicants based on their socioeconomic status or perceived future financial contributions to the university is ethically unsound and likely violates the non-discriminatory principles that should govern admissions. Such a practice would be discriminatory and contrary to the academic mission of the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the institution's admission policies and regulatory framework. Professionals must prioritize objective, merit-based assessments that are transparent and fair to all applicants. When faced with ambiguous situations or pressure to deviate from established procedures, it is crucial to consult official guidelines, seek clarification from relevant authorities within the university, and always act in a manner that upholds academic integrity and ethical standards. Question 4. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a candidate attempting to gain an unfair advantage during the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination, with a high impact on the overall fairness of the process. You observe another applicant discreetly looking at notes hidden under their desk. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Make a note of the behavior and report it after the examination is concluded. Option B. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Option C. Ignore the behavior, assuming it is a minor issue. Option D. Directly confront the other applicant about their actions. The correct answer is B. Discreetly inform the invigilator or examination supervisor about the observed behavior. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the ethical considerations and regulatory principles governing academic integrity within the context of university entrance examinations, specifically as they pertain to Qalam University Katsina. The core of the challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate and ethically sound response when faced with potential academic misconduct, balancing the need for fairness to all applicants with the university's commitment to upholding its standards. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between minor oversights and deliberate attempts to gain an unfair advantage. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent process of reporting observed irregularities to the appropriate examination authorities. This approach is right because it adheres to the established protocols for managing examination integrity, which are implicitly guided by the principles of fairness, honesty, and accountability expected by Qalam University Katsina. By escalating the concern to the examination committee or invigilator, The applicant ensures that the situation is handled by those with the mandate and expertise to investigate and make informed decisions, thereby upholding the integrity of the entrance examination process and ensuring a level playing field for all candidates. This aligns with the ethical duty to report misconduct and the regulatory expectation that examination processes are conducted fairly and without bias. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the observed behavior is professionally unacceptable because it tacitly condones potential academic dishonesty, undermining the fairness of the examination. Its failure to act violates the ethical principle of integrity and the implicit regulatory requirement to maintain a secure and fair examination environment. Another incorrect approach, such as confronting the other applicant directly, is also professionally unsound. This bypasses the established reporting channels and could lead to unnecessary conflict or misinterpretation, potentially jeopardizing the examination process and creating an unprofessional situation. It fails to respect the authority of the examination administrators and could be seen as an attempt to take matters into one's own hands, which is not in line with professional conduct during an examination. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established procedures and ethical guidelines. This involves first identifying the potential issue, then assessing its severity in relation to examination rules, and finally, reporting it through the designated channels to the relevant authorities. This systematic approach ensures that all actions are justifiable, transparent, and aligned with the principles of academic integrity and regulatory compliance. Question 5. During the evaluation of an applicant for admission to Qalam University Katsina, an admissions officer is presented with a candidate who has achieved a commendable score on the entrance examination, but has a less distinguished academic record in secondary school. The officer is considering how best to assess this applicant's overall suitability for the university. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of a fair and comprehensive university entrance examination process at Qalam University Katsina? Option A. Conducting a holistic review that considers the entrance examination score alongside other relevant factors such as the applicant's secondary school performance, extracurricular activities, personal statement, and any provided references, as per the university's stated admission framework. Option B. Prioritizing the entrance examination score as the sole determinant of admission, given its direct assessment of readiness for university-level study. Option C. Advocating for the applicant's admission based on a personal acquaintance with the applicant's family, believing this connection indicates the applicant's potential. Option D. Focusing primarily on the applicant's secondary school academic record, assuming it is a more reliable indicator of long-term academic capability than a single entrance examination. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the entrance examination score as the sole determinant of admission, given its direct assessment of readiness for university-level study. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles and ethical considerations relevant to university admissions, specifically within the context of Qalam University Katsina's established guidelines. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate and ethically sound method for assessing an applicant's suitability beyond purely academic metrics, while adhering to the university's stated admission policies. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between approaches that uphold fairness and integrity and those that could introduce bias or circumvent established procedures. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers a range of factors beyond just examination scores, as outlined in Qalam University Katsina's admission framework. This approach is right because it aligns with the university's commitment to identifying well-rounded individuals who can contribute positively to the academic community. Specifically, it reflects the regulatory intent of admission policies to ensure equitable opportunity and to select candidates who possess not only academic potential, but also character and potential for growth, as implicitly guided by the university's mission and values. This method promotes fairness by acknowledging diverse talents and experiences. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on examination scores, while seemingly objective, fails to acknowledge the broader criteria that Qalam University Katsina may deem important for its student body. This overlooks the potential for other attributes to be equally, if not more, indicative of a candidate's future success and contribution. Another incorrect approach that involves seeking external influence or preferential treatment directly violates the principles of meritocracy and fair selection, which are fundamental to any reputable academic institution's admission process. Such actions undermine the integrity of the examination and admission system, creating an unfair advantage and potentially admitting less qualified candidates. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes personal connections over stated admission criteria is ethically unsound and erodes trust in the university selection process. It introduces bias and contradicts the transparent and objective evaluation expected in university admissions. Professionals involved in admission should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the university's official admission policies and guidelines. This framework should then involve a systematic evaluation of each applicant against these established criteria, ensuring consistency and fairness. When faced with borderline cases or diverse applicant profiles, professionals should refer to established protocols for further review or consultation, always prioritizing ethical conduct and the integrity of the admission process. Question 6. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk of admitting students who do not fully meet the academic prerequisites due to potential external influence on the admissions committee. During the review of applications for the upcoming academic year at Qalam University, Katsina, the admissions committee receives a list of candidates recommended by a prominent faculty member, some of whom have borderline scores that fall slightly below the published minimum entry requirements. The committee is aware of the university's commitment to academic excellence and its established admission guidelines. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Inform the faculty member that their recommendations cannot be considered due to the strictness of the admission criteria without further evaluation of the candidates. Option B. Forward the list of recommended candidates directly to the Dean of Admissions for a final decision without an independent committee review to expedite the process and defer responsibility. Option C. Admit the recommended candidates who are borderline, assuming the faculty member's recommendation implies they possess potential beyond their scores, to foster good departmental relations. Option D. Conduct a thorough review of each borderline candidate's application, considering their overall profile, supporting documents, and any extenuating circumstances, while strictly adhering to the university's published admission criteria and seeking formal approval for any deviation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough review of each borderline candidate's application, considering their overall profile, supporting documents, and any extenuating circumstances, while strictly adhering to the university's published admission criteria and seeking formal approval for any deviation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to admit students who may not meet the established criteria. The admissions committee must navigate this delicate balance, ensuring fairness and adherence to the university's own regulations, while also considering the broader implications for the institution's reputation and the quality of its student body. The risk matrix, as a tool, highlights potential areas of concern, but its interpretation requires careful judgment and a deep understanding of the underlying principles of ethical admissions. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective evaluation of each applicant's qualifications against the established entry requirements, irrespective of external pressures or perceived institutional needs. This aligns with the Qalam University Katsina's commitment to merit-based admissions and the ethical obligation to maintain academic standards. The university's regulatory framework, as outlined in its admission guidelines and academic policies, mandates a transparent and equitable selection process. Adhering to these guidelines ensures that decisions are defensible, consistent, and uphold the integrity of the university's academic programs. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize anecdotal evidence or personal recommendations over documented qualifications. This fails to uphold the principle of objective assessment and can lead to the admission of underqualified students, thereby compromising academic standards and potentially creating a perception of favoritism or bias. Such an approach directly contravenes the university's stated admission criteria and the ethical imperative for fair and impartial decision-making. Another incorrect approach is to succumb to pressure from influential individuals or departments to admit specific candidates who do not meet the minimum requirements. This undermines the authority of the admissions committee and the established regulatory framework. It introduces an element of undue influence, which is ethically unsound and can damage the university's reputation for fairness and academic rigor. This action would violate the spirit and letter of the university's admission policies, which are designed to ensure that all applicants are evaluated on a level playing field. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical codes. When faced with conflicting pressures or ambiguous information, professionals should 1. Reaffirm the established criteria and procedures. 2. Seek clarification from relevant authorities if the situation is unclear. 3. Document all decisions and the rationale behind them. 4. Prioritize objectivity and fairness above all else, ensuring that decisions are based on merit and adherence to regulations. 5. Escalate concerns to higher authorities if undue pressure or unethical practices are suspected. Question 7. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in the pass rates for core courses in the Faculty of Arts and Islamic Studies over the past 2 academic sessions. However, anecdotal evidence from faculty suggests a decline in the depth of student engagement with the subject matter and a rise in superficial understanding. The university administration is keen to highlight this improved performance in its upcoming accreditation review. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while upholding the principles of academic integrity and quality education at Qalam University, Katsina? Option A. Implement a more lenient grading system across all core courses to ensure that pass rates continue to rise, thereby solidifying the perception of improved academic performance for the accreditation review. Option B. Publicly celebrate the increased pass rates as a testament to the faculty's effectiveness and the students' improved academic capabilities, and use this data prominently in the accreditation review. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of teaching methodologies, assessment strategies, and student support services to identify factors contributing to both the increased pass rates and the perceived decline in engagement, and propose targeted interventions. Option D. Focus solely on the quantitative data of pass rates and present it as the primary indicator of academic success to the accreditation body, while downplaying any qualitative concerns raised by faculty. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of teaching methodologies, assessment strategies, and student support services to identify factors contributing to both the increased pass rates and the perceived decline in engagement, and propose targeted interventions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the pressure to achieve specific performance metrics. The university administration's focus on immediate results, potentially through a narrow interpretation of performance, could inadvertently incentivize practices that undermine genuine learning and ethical conduct among students. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for measurable outcomes with the fundamental principles of education and fairness. The correct approach involves a holistic review of student performance that considers multiple dimensions beyond simple pass rates. This includes evaluating the effectiveness of teaching methodologies, the clarity of assessment criteria, and the provision of adequate support resources for students. This approach aligns with the Qalam University Katsina's likely commitment to fostering well-rounded graduates and upholding academic standards. Ethically, it prioritizes student development and fair evaluation over potentially misleading superficial metrics. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing pass rates without addressing the underlying causes of student performance failures would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a lowering of academic standards, potentially admitting students who are not adequately prepared or graduating students who lack the necessary competencies. Such a focus would violate the ethical obligation to ensure the quality of education and the integrity of the university's qualifications. Another incorrect approach that involves manipulating assessment data or overlooking instances of academic misconduct to artificially inflate performance metrics would be a severe ethical and regulatory breach. This undermines the trust placed in the university and its degrees, and directly contravenes any stated commitment to academic honesty and fairness. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining what constitutes performance in an academic context, ensuring it aligns with the university's mission and values. This involves gathering comprehensive data, seeking input from various stakeholders, faculty, students, administration, and critically analyzing trends to identify root causes rather than symptoms. Ethical considerations, such as fairness, transparency, and the long-term development of students, must guide all decisions. When faced with pressure for short-term gains, professionals must advocate for sustainable and ethically sound practices that uphold the institution's reputation and the value of its educational offerings. Question 8. Strategic planning requires Qalam University Katsina's admissions committee to develop a robust framework for selecting candidates for its highly sought-after postgraduate programs. Given the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable access, which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of fair and transparent admissions? Adhering strictly to the university's established regulatory framework and national educational guidelines. Option A. Allowing individual faculty members to admit candidates they personally believe would benefit from the program, irrespective of whether they meet all formal admission requirements. Option B. Adjusting admission criteria on a case-by-case basis to accommodate candidates who demonstrate exceptional extracurricular achievements but fall short on academic prerequisites. Option C. Implementing a multi-stage evaluation process, where all applications are first screened against predefined academic and experiential criteria, followed by interviews to assess suitability and potential, with all decisions documented and justifiable against these criteria. Option D. Prioritizing candidates who have strong personal recommendations from influential figures, even if their academic scores are slightly below the stated cutoff. The correct answer is D. Prioritizing candidates who have strong personal recommendations from influential figures, even if their academic scores are slightly below the stated cutoff. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for Qalam University Katsina's admissions committee regarding the fair and transparent selection of candidates for a highly competitive program. The challenge lies in balancing the university's stated commitment to meritocracy with the potential for undue influence or bias, which could undermine the integrity of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all applicants are evaluated based on objective criteria, and that the process adheres to the university's established guidelines and any relevant national educational policies. The correct approach involves a systematic review of all applications against predefined, objective admission criteria. This ensures that decisions are based on academic merit, relevant experience, and other quantifiable factors, as outlined in Qalam University Katsina's admission regulations. This method upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity, preventing any applicant from receiving preferential treatment outside the established framework. It aligns with the ethical imperative of transparency and accountability in academic admissions, ensuring that the university's reputation for academic excellence is maintained. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize candidates based on personal recommendations or informal connections without a clear link to the established admission criteria. This introduces subjectivity and the potential for bias, violating the principle of meritocracy and potentially contravening any university policies or national guidelines that mandate fair selection processes. Such an approach erodes trust in the admission system and could lead to the selection of less qualified candidates, thereby diminishing the academic standards of the program. Another incorrect approach would be to deviate from the published admission criteria to accommodate candidates who may not fully meet the requirements but are perceived as having potential or coming from specific backgrounds not explicitly covered by the existing criteria. While a holistic review is sometimes encouraged, any deviation must be clearly defined within the university's policy and applied consistently. Unilateral deviations without a formal policy change or committee approval can be seen as arbitrary and unfair, opening the door to accusations of favoritism. A further incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the subjective impressions of the admissions committee members without a structured evaluation framework. This can lead to inconsistent decision-making, where similar applications are treated differently based on individual biases or preferences. It fails to provide a defensible rationale for admissions decisions and can be challenged on grounds of fairness and procedural irregularity, potentially violating the spirit of any regulatory framework governing university admissions in Nigeria. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Qalam University Katsina's official admission policy and any relevant national educational regulations. 2. establishing clear, objective, and measurable admission criteria that are communicated transparently to all applicants. 3. Implementing a standardized evaluation process for all applications, ensuring consistency in assessment. 4. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them, allowing for review and accountability. 5. Seeking clarification or guidance from university administration or relevant regulatory bodies if any ambiguity arises regarding the application of policies. Question 9. The evaluation methodology shows that prospective students for Qalam University Katsina are expected to demonstrate a thorough understanding of the examination scope and adhere strictly to its integrity guidelines. A candidate, eager to secure admission, learns about a private tutoring service that claims to have access to past examination papers and guarantees a high score. The candidate is also aware of online forums where students discuss potential exam questions and share study notes. Considering the university's emphasis on academic honesty, which of the following represents the most appropriate and ethically sound approach for the candidate's preparation? Option A. Purchase a set of guaranteed success study materials advertised online, which are purported to cover all possible exam topics. Option B. Focus on independent study using the official syllabus and recommended textbooks, and seek clarification from the university admissions office if any aspect of the preparation is unclear. Option C. Engage with the private tutoring service that claims access to past papers and guarantees a high score, as this offers a direct advantage. Option D. Actively participate in online forums, sharing and receiving study notes, and discussing potential exam questions to gain insights from peers. The correct answer is C. Engage with the private tutoring service that claims access to past papers and guarantees a high score, as this offers a direct advantage. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an aspiring student at Qalam University Katsina, requiring them to navigate the ethical considerations of academic integrity within the context of the university's entrance examination regulations. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the desire to perform well with the imperative to adhere to the established rules and uphold honesty. Careful judgment is required to discern between acceptable and unacceptable methods of preparation, and to understand the potential consequences of any deviation from the university's guidelines. The correct approach involves diligent, independent study using officially recognized or recommended resources, and seeking clarification from university admissions or academic advisors when in doubt about specific preparation materials or methods. This approach aligns with the fundamental principles of academic integrity, which are paramount in any educational institution, including Qalam University Katsina. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of entrance examination regulations that typically prohibit any form of unfair advantage or academic dishonesty. By relying on one's own efforts and approved channels for information, the student demonstrates respect for the examination process and the institution's commitment to fair evaluation. An incorrect approach that involves seeking or utilizing leaked examination materials is a direct violation of academic integrity and university regulations. This constitutes examination malpractice, which carries severe penalties, including immediate disqualification from the entrance examination and potential disciplinary action by the university. Such an action undermines the fairness of the examination for all candidates and devalues the academic achievements of those who prepare honestly. Another incorrect approach, such as paying an individual to provide answers or assistance during the examination, is also a form of cheating and academic dishonesty. This not only violates the university's rules, but also represents a serious ethical lapse. It creates an unfair advantage and compromises the validity of the examination results. The university's regulations are designed to ensure that all candidates are assessed on their own knowledge and abilities. A third incorrect approach, such as relying solely on unofficial or unverified online forums for exam preparation without cross-referencing with official university materials, poses a risk of misinformation. While not outright cheating, it can lead to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the syllabus and examination format, potentially disadvantaging the student. More importantly, if these forums are used to discuss or share actual exam content, it could inadvertently lead to participation in or facilitation of academic misconduct, which is contrary to the university's expectations of ethical conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's examination rules and code of conduct. Candidates should prioritize honest preparation, seek guidance from official university sources, and be wary of any shortcuts or offers that seem too good to be true. When faced with uncertainty, the most ethical and prudent course of action is to consult the relevant university authorities. Question 10. Governance review demonstrates that a final-year student at Qalam University Katsina, who has consistently performed well academically, is facing significant financial hardship due to an unexpected family emergency, making it impossible for them to meet the upcoming tuition fee deadline. The student has approached the relevant department for an extension or a payment plan. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university administration to consider? Option A. Immediately grant a full tuition fee waiver for the student without further investigation to prevent their academic progression from being halted. Option B. Strictly enforce the tuition fee deadline, informing the student that failure to pay will result in their inability to graduate, and advise them to seek external financial assistance. Option C. Initiate a review of the student's financial situation to explore all available internal university financial aid options, payment plan possibilities, and potential temporary deferrals, while ensuring adherence to the spirit of university policies on student support. Option D. Advise the student to withdraw from the university and re-enroll once their financial situation has stabilized, suggesting they seek assistance from local charities. The correct answer is C. Initiate a review of the student's financial situation to explore all available internal university financial aid options, payment plan possibilities, and potential temporary deferrals, while ensuring adherence to the spirit of university policies on student support. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires navigating potential conflicts between established university policies and the evolving needs of student welfare, all within the specific regulatory and ethical framework of Qalam University Katsina. The challenge lies in balancing administrative efficiency with the imperative to provide a supportive and accessible learning environment, ensuring that policy implementation does not inadvertently create barriers for students facing genuine hardship. Careful judgment is required to interpret and apply existing guidelines in a manner that upholds the university's mission and values. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the Qalam University Katsina's existing financial aid policies and admission guidelines, coupled with a compassionate and flexible application of these rules. This approach prioritizes student well-being by seeking to identify and address the root causes of the student's inability to pay fees, exploring all available internal support mechanisms before resorting to strict enforcement of policies. This aligns with the ethical responsibility of educational institutions to foster student success and is consistent with the spirit of the university's commitment to accessible education, even if not explicitly detailed in every clause of the policy. It demonstrates a proactive and student-centric problem-solving methodology. An incorrect approach would be to rigidly adhere to the stated fee payment deadline without exploring any mitigating circumstances or alternative solutions. This fails to acknowledge the potential for unforeseen personal crises that can affect students and could lead to the exclusion of a deserving student, thereby undermining the university's broader educational mission. Represents a failure in ethical consideration for student welfare and a lack of professional discretion in applying policy. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately grant a fee waiver without proper due diligence or consultation with relevant university departments. While seemingly compassionate, this bypasses established procedures and could set a precedent for arbitrary decision-making, potentially leading to financial strain on the university and unfairness to other students who adhere to the payment schedules. This approach neglects the importance of procedural fairness and responsible financial management within the university's governance structure. A further incorrect approach would be to refer the student to external agencies without first exhausting all internal support options. While external referrals can be valuable, the university has a primary responsibility to support its students. Failing to explore internal avenues first demonstrates a lack of commitment to student welfare and an abdication of the university's duty of care. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Actively listening to and understanding the student's situation. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines. 3. Identifying all available internal support mechanisms and resources. 4. Exercising professional judgment to determine the most appropriate course of action, balancing policy adherence with student welfare. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind it. 6. Seeking guidance from senior administrators or relevant committees if the situation is complex or sets a significant precedent. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential discrepancy in the examination performance of a candidate for the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam, with a proctor reporting observing unusual behavior during the examination. The university's internal guidelines for entrance examinations stipulate a clear process for handling suspected academic misconduct. Which of the following actions best aligns with the university's regulatory framework for maintaining academic integrity? Option A. Publicly announce that the university is investigating potential misconduct to deter future incidents. Option B. Overlook the report, assuming it is a minor issue and unlikely to affect the candidate's overall performance significantly. Option C. Immediately disqualify the candidate based on the proctor's report and inform them of their ineligibility for admission. Option D. Initiate a formal investigation into the reported behavior, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond, in accordance with the university's established disciplinary procedures for entrance examinations. The correct answer is C. Immediately disqualify the candidate based on the proctor's report and inform them of their ineligibility for admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams, especially for a reputable institution like Qalam University Katsina, can lead some students to seek unfair advantages. The university's regulatory framework, as it pertains to entrance examinations, is designed to ensure a level playing field and uphold the credibility of its admissions process. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential breaches of these regulations without prejudicing genuine applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based investigation that adheres strictly to the Qalam University Katsina's established examination guidelines and disciplinary procedures. This approach prioritizes fairness, due process, and the integrity of the examination system. It requires gathering all relevant information, including the student's application, examination performance, and any reported irregularities, before making a determination. The university's internal regulations, which would govern the conduct of its entrance examinations, mandate that any allegations of academic misconduct must be investigated impartially and in accordance with established protocols. This ensures that decisions are not arbitrary and that students have an opportunity to respond to any accusations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student based on a single, unverified report. This fails to uphold the principle of due process, which is a cornerstone of fair academic governance. It also bypasses the university's established procedures for handling suspected academic misconduct, thereby undermining the credibility of those procedures. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the report entirely, assuming it is unfounded without any investigation. This neglects the university's responsibility to maintain academic integrity and could allow a student who has engaged in misconduct to gain admission unfairly, thereby disadvantaging other deserving candidates. A third incorrect approach would be to confront the student without any prior investigation or evidence, demanding an explanation. This can be perceived as accusatory and may not yield accurate information, potentially leading to a premature and unjust conclusion. Professionals in university admissions and examination administration should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes 1. Adherence to established policies and procedures. 2. Impartial investigation of all credible allegations. 3. Ensuring due process for all individuals involved. And 4. Maintaining the integrity and fairness of the admission process. This involves a systematic approach to information gathering, evidence evaluation, and decision-making, always referencing the specific regulatory framework of Qalam University Katsina. Question 12. The risk matrix shows a high probability of admitting underqualified students if the admission target is aggressively pursued without a commensurate increase in faculty resources. The admissions committee is tasked with selecting the next cohort of students for the Faculty of Arts and Islamic Studies. The committee is aware of the university's strategic goal to increase student enrollment by 15% this academic year. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the ethical and regulatory framework for Qalam University Katsina's entrance examination? Option A. Prioritize admitting candidates who meet the minimum academic requirements and demonstrate potential for success, even if this means not fully meeting the 15% enrollment increase target, and flag the resource gap to the university administration for future planning. Option B. Select candidates based on recommendations from influential community members and university stakeholders, prioritizing those who can bring prestige or future benefits to the university, regardless of their academic scores. Option C. Implement a lottery system for candidates who meet the basic entry requirements to ensure fairness and quickly fill the remaining admission slots to meet the enrollment target. Option D. Focus on admitting candidates who are likely to meet the 15% enrollment increase target, even if some candidates fall slightly below the ideal academic threshold, to ensure institutional growth objectives are met. The correct answer is A. Prioritize admitting candidates who meet the minimum academic requirements and demonstrate potential for success, even if this means not fully meeting the 15% enrollment increase target, and flag the resource gap to the university administration for future planning. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the pressure to admit a high number of qualified candidates. The university's admission committee must balance the need to maintain academic standards with the institutional goal of growth and reputation. The risk matrix, by highlighting potential issues like admitting underqualified students or rejecting strong candidates, underscores the need for a nuanced and ethically grounded decision-making process. The committee must consider not only the stated criteria, but also the broader implications of their choices on the university's academic standing and its commitment to providing educational opportunities. The correct approach involves a thorough, holistic review of each applicant's profile, considering all stated admission criteria and any mitigating circumstances, while also adhering strictly to the Qalam University Katsina's published admission policies and guidelines. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established rules. It ensures that decisions are based on merit and objective assessment, minimizing bias and upholding the integrity of the admission process. This aligns with the fundamental principles of good governance and academic excellence expected of an educational institution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on meeting a predetermined quota, even if it appears to be for the benefit of institutional growth, fails to uphold the principle of meritocracy. This can lead to the admission of students who may not be adequately prepared for the academic rigor of the university, potentially impacting the overall academic performance and reputation of Qalam University Katsina. It also risks overlooking highly qualified candidates who might not fit a narrow quota, thereby denying deserving individuals an educational opportunity. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes admitting candidates based on personal connections or perceived future influence, rather than academic merit and adherence to admission criteria, represents a severe ethical failure. This practice undermines the fairness and impartiality of the admission process, fostering an environment of nepotism and potentially leading to the admission of underqualified individuals. Such actions directly contravene the principles of transparency and equal opportunity, damaging the university's credibility and public trust. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to the established admission policies and guidelines of Qalam University Katsina. It requires a systematic evaluation of all applicants against these criteria, with a focus on objective assessment. When faced with difficult choices or potential conflicts between institutional goals and ethical considerations, professionals should refer back to the university's mission statement, its code of conduct, and its admission regulations. Seeking guidance from senior colleagues or the relevant university authorities is also a crucial step in ensuring that decisions are both sound and defensible. The ultimate aim is to make decisions that are fair, transparent, and in the best interest of both the individual applicants and the institution's academic integrity. Question 13. Investigation of a scenario where a prospective student preparing for the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam overhears another candidate discussing specific questions from a previous year's exam with a friend, implying they have access to leaked materials. The prospective student is concerned about the fairness of the exam process. Option A. The prospective student should ignore the conversation, assuming it is mere speculation and not wanting to cause unnecessary trouble or draw attention to themselves. Option B. The prospective student should discreetly inform the examination invigilator or relevant university authority about the overheard conversation, providing as much detail as possible without directly confronting the individuals involved. Option C. The prospective student should approach the individuals involved and ask them directly if they have access to leaked exam materials to verify the information. Option D. The prospective student should use the overheard information to try and find similar materials to prepare themselves, believing it is a way to level the playing field. The correct answer is B. The prospective student should discreetly inform the examination invigilator or relevant university authority about the overheard conversation, providing as much detail as possible without directly confronting the individuals involved. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well in a high-stakes entrance exam, coupled with the potential for personal gain or loss, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to navigate these pressures while upholding the principles of honesty and fairness. The correct approach involves a student recognizing the ethical boundaries and choosing to rely solely on their own knowledge and preparation. This aligns with the core principles of academic integrity, which are fundamental to the Qalam University Katsina entrance exams regulatory framework. Specifically, adherence to the university's examination rules and the broader ethical expectations of academic institutions in Nigeria mandates that all candidates present their own unaided work. This approach ensures a fair assessment of each candidate's capabilities and maintains the credibility of the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to seek or accept unauthorized assistance. This directly violates the examination regulations, which prohibit any form of cheating or collusion. Such actions undermine the fairness of the assessment, devalue the achievements of honest candidates, and can lead to severe academic penalties, including disqualification from the entrance exam and potential blacklisting from future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the possibility of cheating by others, as this fails to uphold a proactive stance on maintaining exam integrity, even if not directly participating. A responsible candidate should be aware of and report any observed irregularities to the invigilators, thereby contributing to a fair examination environment for all. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the examination rules and ethical guidelines. Candidates must internalize the importance of academic honesty and the consequences of its violation. When faced with a situation that presents an ethical dilemma, such as observing potential misconduct or feeling tempted to engage in it, a professional approach involves pausing to consider the immediate and long-term implications. This includes evaluating the action against established rules and ethical principles. If an ethical breach is observed, the professional response is to report it through the appropriate channels, rather than ignoring it or participating. If tempted, the individual must actively resist the temptation by focusing on their own preparation and the integrity of the process. Question 14. The risk matrix shows a potential applicant for the Qalam University Katsina's Faculty of Law has achieved the minimum entry score, but exhibits a pattern of fluctuating grades in their secondary school certificate, with a notable dip in their final year. This pattern has been flagged as a moderate risk for academic underperformance. The admissions committee is deliberating on the next steps. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Reject the applicant's application outright due to the identified risk of academic underperformance. Option B. Request the applicant to provide a detailed explanation of their academic performance fluctuations and submit additional supporting documents, such as a personal statement and recommendation letters, for a comprehensive review. Option C. Offer the applicant immediate and unconditional admission, trusting their ability to adapt to the university's academic rigor. Option D. Proceed with a conditional offer of admission, requiring the applicant to attend a pre-sessional academic support program before commencing their studies. The correct answer is D. Proceed with a conditional offer of admission, requiring the applicant to attend a pre-sessional academic support program before commencing their studies. Explanation: the scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions where an applicant's academic profile, while meeting minimum requirements, raises concerns about their preparedness for the rigorous academic demands of Qalam University Katsina. The risk matrix, a tool for assessing potential issues, highlights this discrepancy. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to inclusivity and providing opportunities with its responsibility to maintain academic standards and ensure student success. A hasty decision, either outright rejection or unqualified acceptance, could have negative consequences for both the applicant and the institution. The correct approach involves a holistic review that goes beyond the raw data on the risk matrix. This entails seeking further information to understand the context behind the applicant's academic record. This might include reviewing their personal statement for evidence of motivation and resilience, considering recommendation letters for insights into their character and potential, and potentially conducting an interview to gauge their understanding of the program and their readiness. This approach aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and due diligence, ensuring that decisions are informed and equitable, and reflect the university's commitment to admitting students who are likely to thrive. It also adheres to the spirit of the Qalam University Katsina's admission guidelines, which, while setting benchmarks, also allow for nuanced evaluation. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the risk matrix and reject the applicant based on a perceived low score without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that the matrix is a diagnostic tool, not a definitive judgment. It overlooks the possibility that mitigating factors exist and could lead to a different conclusion. Ethically, this is unfair to the applicant, denying them a fair assessment of their potential. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the applicant without any further consideration, despite the red flags on the risk matrix. This disregards the university's responsibility to ensure students are adequately prepared for academic success, potentially leading to higher dropout rates or academic struggles for the student, and a dilution of academic standards. This approach neglects the principle of institutional responsibility and academic integrity. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the purpose and limitations of the tools at their disposal. Like the risk matrix, they should then engage in a process of information gathering and contextualization, seeking to understand the why behind the data. This involves critical thinking, empathy, and a commitment to fairness, ensuring that decisions are not only compliant with regulations, but also ethically sound and in the best interest of all parties involved. Question 15. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk of potential academic misconduct associated with a specific applicant's submitted documents for the Qalam University Katsina entrance examination. The admissions committee is reviewing this application. Which of the following actions best reflects the appropriate professional response according to the university's likely admission framework? Option A. Contact the applicant's previous institution for informal feedback without a formal investigation process. Option B. Initiate a formal review process to investigate the flagged risk, gather further information, and make an informed decision based on findings and university policy. Option C. Immediately reject the application due to the flagged risk of misconduct. Option D. Proceed with admitting the applicant without further investigation, assuming the flag is a minor anomaly. The correct answer is C. Immediately reject the application due to the flagged risk of misconduct. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under pressure. The admissions committee must make a decision that upholds the standards of Qalam University Katsina, while also ensuring fairness and adherence to established admission policies. The risk matrix, indicating a moderate risk of academic misconduct, necessitates a cautious and evidence-based approach rather than an immediate punitive one. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the flagged application. This is right because it aligns with the principles of due process and fairness, which are fundamental to any academic institution's ethical framework. Specifically, it adheres to the Qalam University Katsina's stated admission policies, which would typically require verification of submitted documents and investigation of any discrepancies or potential misconduct before a final decision is made. This approach respects the applicant's right to have their case reviewed objectively and prevents premature judgment. It also safeguards the university's reputation by ensuring that only qualified and ethically sound candidates are admitted. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application based solely on the risk matrix flag without further inquiry. This fails to uphold the principle of fairness and due process, potentially penalizing a student for an error or misunderstanding rather than deliberate misconduct. It also bypasses the university's own established procedures for handling such situations, which would likely mandate an investigation. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the applicant without any further scrutiny, despite the identified risk. This would be a dereliction of the university's duty to maintain academic standards and could expose the institution to future issues related to academic integrity. It ignores the warning provided by the risk matrix and could set a precedent for lax admission practices. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence, fairness, and adherence to policy. This involves 1. Acknowledging and understanding the information presented, the risk matrix. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines for handling flagged applications. 3. Initiating a systematic investigation to gather facts. 4. Evaluating the findings objectively. 5. Making a decision based on the evidence and policies, ensuring transparency and consistency. Question 16. When evaluating the admission requirements for the Faculty of Law at Qalam University, Katsina, a prospective student discovers that their secondary school certificate has a minor discrepancy in the date of issuance compared to their birth certificate. The student is concerned this might affect their application, but is also eager to submit their application before the deadline. What is the most appropriate course of action for the student to ensure compliance with the university's admission framework? Option A. Contact the Qalam University Katsina admissions office immediately to inquire about the discrepancy and follow their guidance on how to rectify or address it. Option B. Attempt to alter the date on the secondary school certificate to match the birth certificate before submitting the application. Option C. Submit the application with the existing certificate, assuming the discrepancy is minor and will be overlooked by the admissions committee. Option D. Omit the secondary school certificate from the application and submit other supporting documents, hoping to address the certificate issue later. The correct answer is C. Submit the application with the existing certificate, assuming the discrepancy is minor and will be overlooked by the admissions committee. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for prospective students applying to Qalam University Katsina, as it requires them to understand the university's admission policies and the implications of providing incomplete or inaccurate information. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the desire to present oneself favorably with the ethical obligation of honesty and adherence to institutional rules. Misrepresenting information, even if seemingly minor, can have significant consequences, including disqualification from the admission process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Qalam University Katsina's official admission guidelines and prospectus. This includes understanding the specific documentation required for each program, the deadlines for submission, and the consequences of noncompliance or misrepresentation. A prospective student must then ensure all submitted documents are accurate, complete, and submitted within the stipulated timeframe. This approach aligns with the university's regulatory framework, which emphasizes integrity and adherence to established procedures for a fair and transparent admission process. It demonstrates respect for the institution's rules and a commitment to ethical conduct, which are foundational principles for academic pursuit. An incorrect approach would be to submit an application with deliberately omitted or falsified information, hoping to gain an advantage or overlook a requirement. This directly violates the ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of all applicants. It also contravenes the university's regulatory framework, which likely includes clauses on academic honesty and the consequences of submitting fraudulent documents. Such an action undermines the fairness of the admission process for all other applicants and can lead to immediate disqualification and potential blacklisting from future applications. Another incorrect approach is to assume that minor inaccuracies will be overlooked. While some institutions may have leniency for minor clerical errors, deliberately submitting incomplete information without proper disclosure is a breach of trust and a violation of the established admission protocols. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and respect for the university's requirements. Professionals should approach such situations by prioritizing transparency, accuracy, and adherence to established rules. This involves proactive research into the specific requirements of the institution, careful preparation of all necessary documentation, and honest self-assessment of one's qualifications and circumstances. When in doubt about any requirement, the professional decision-making process dictates seeking clarification directly from the university's admissions office rather than making assumptions or attempting to circumvent the process. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a high probability of academic integrity concerns for a prospective student applying to the Faculty of Arts at Qalam University, Katsina, based on a pattern of inconsistent grades across different subjects in their secondary school certificate examination. The admissions committee is reviewing this applicant's file. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for university admissions in Nigeria? Option A. Forward the application to the university's disciplinary committee for a preliminary investigation into academic integrity before any admission decision is made. Option B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire application, including their personal statement and any provided explanations for the grade inconsistencies, and consider an interview to gain further insight before making a final decision. Option C. Immediately reject the applicant's application based on the high-risk indicator from the matrix, as it suggests a potential for academic dishonesty. Option D. Accept the applicant based on their overall score in the examination, assuming the risk matrix is a secondary consideration and not a definitive disqualifier. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's entire application, including their personal statement and any provided explanations for the grade inconsistencies, and consider an interview to gain further insight before making a final decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to fairly assess applicants. The risk matrix, common tool in risk management, highlights potential areas of concern, but its interpretation demands careful judgment. The challenge lies in moving beyond a purely statistical interpretation of the matrix to understand the underlying causes of the identified risks and to implement appropriate, ethically sound responses that align with the Qalam University Katsina's admission policies and the Nigerian National Universities Commission (NUC) guidelines. The correct approach involves a nuanced review of the applicant's profile, considering the identified risk factors in the context of their overall application and potential mitigating circumstances. This approach prioritizes a holistic assessment, recognizing that a single data point or a pattern identified by the risk matrix may not tell the whole story. It aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and due process, ensuring that applicants are not unfairly penalized based on potentially incomplete or misleading risk indicators. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of NUC guidelines that emphasize merit-based admissions, while allowing for institutional discretion in evaluating unique applicant situations, provided such discretion is exercised transparently and equitably. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the high-risk indicators without further investigation would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a rigid, mechanistic application of the risk matrix, ignoring the possibility of false positives or extenuating circumstances. Such an approach risks violating the principle of fairness by prejudging an applicant based on limited information, potentially leading to the rejection of a deserving candidate. It also fails to demonstrate due diligence in the admission process, which is implicitly expected by regulatory bodies like the NUC, which mandate fair and transparent admission procedures. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection based on the risk matrix, without any form of appeal or further review, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This bypasses fundamental principles of natural justice and due process. It assumes the risk matrix is an infallible determinant of an applicant's suitability, which is a flawed premise. Professionally, decision-making in admissions should involve a structured process that allows for reconsideration and provides applicants with an opportunity to address any concerns raised. This approach would likely contravene any established university policy on admissions and the broader regulatory expectation of a fair and transparent selection process. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific risk indicators identified by the matrix and their potential implications within the context of university admissions. 2. consulting the Qalam University Katsina's admission policy and relevant NUC guidelines to understand the framework for applicant assessment and risk management. 3. Investigating the identified risks by seeking additional information, such as reviewing the applicant's full academic record, personal statement, and any supporting documents. 4. Considering potential mitigating factors or explanations for the identified risks. 5. Making a reasoned decision based on a holistic assessment of the applicant's profile, ensuring fairness, transparency, and adherence to regulatory requirements. 6. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind the final outcome. Question 18. Analysis of a situation where a prospective student preparing for the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam is approached by a friend who has already completed the exam. The friend offers to share specific questions and answers they encountered, claiming it will significantly improve the prospective student's chances of admission. The prospective student is aware that the university's examination guidelines strictly prohibit any form of collusion or sharing of exam content. What is the most ethically sound and regulation-compliant course of action for the prospective student? Option A. Accept the friend's offer and use the shared information to prepare, believing that it is a common practice among students and will not be detected. Option B. Politely decline the friend's offer, clearly stating that it violates the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam regulations and that they wish to rely solely on their own preparation. Option C. Discuss the general topics covered in the exam with a friend, but avoid specific questions and answers, assuming this level of discussion is permissible. Option D. Report the friend's offer to the university's admissions office, even though it might strain their friendship. The correct answer is B. Politely decline the friend's offer, clearly stating that it violates the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam regulations and that they wish to rely solely on their own preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an aspiring student at Qalam University Katsina, requiring them to navigate the ethical implications of academic integrity within the specific context of the university's entrance examination regulations. The core challenge lies in balancing the desire to succeed with the imperative to uphold honesty and fairness. Careful judgment is required to discern acceptable assistance from academic misconduct. The correct approach involves understanding and adhering strictly to the Qalam University Katsina entrance exams stated guidelines regarding permissible resources and collaboration. This means relying solely on one's own knowledge and preparation, as explicitly permitted by the examination rules. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams in Nigeria, and specifically at Qalam University Katsina, emphasizes academic integrity and prohibits any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. Adhering to these rules is not merely a procedural requirement, but an ethical obligation that underpins the validity of the examination process and the fairness to all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to seek or accept assistance from a friend who has already taken the exam. This directly violates the principle of individual assessment, as it introduces external, unauthorized information into the examination process. Such an action constitutes academic dishonesty, which is a serious offense under the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam regulations and Nigerian educational law. The ethical failure here is the breach of trust and the attempt to gain an unfair advantage. Another incorrect approach would be to use unauthorized study materials that claim to contain leaked exam questions. This is also a form of academic misconduct. The university's regulations are designed to ensure a level playing field, and relying on potentially leaked or fabricated materials undermines this objective. The ethical failure is the engagement with dishonest practices and the disregard for the integrity of the examination. A third incorrect approach would be to interpret the exam rules loosely and assume that discussing general concepts with a peer before the exam is acceptable, even if it borders on sharing specific question types. While collaboration on study is generally encouraged, the context of an entrance exam demands strict adherence to rules that delineate the boundaries of permissible interaction. The ethical failure lies in misinterpreting or deliberately bending rules to gain an advantage, thereby compromising the fairness of the examination. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a clear understanding of the governing rules and regulations, a commitment to ethical principles, and a proactive approach to seeking clarification if any ambiguity exists. Aspiring students should always err on the side of caution and prioritize honesty and integrity over any perceived shortcut to success. Question 19. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of engagement with preparatory materials for the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. However, the university's admission guidelines are based on a holistic review of academic performance, character references, and a written aptitude test, all within the specific regulatory framework of Nigerian higher education admissions. Which approach best aligns with the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's regulatory framework for evaluating this candidate? Option A. Prioritize the monitoring system's engagement data over the results of the written aptitude test, assuming that engagement directly correlates with future academic success. Option B. Automatically recommend the candidate for admission based on their high engagement with preparatory materials, as indicated by the monitoring system. Option C. Use the monitoring system's data as a supplementary piece of information to be considered alongside academic transcripts, character references, and the aptitude test results, all evaluated strictly according to the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's established admission criteria. Option D. Disqualify the candidate if the monitoring system indicates any deviation from expected engagement patterns, regardless of their performance in other assessment areas. The correct answer is B. Automatically recommend the candidate for admission based on their high engagement with preparatory materials, as indicated by the monitoring system. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for misinterpreting data from the university's monitoring system, which could lead to incorrect admissions decisions. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the interpretation and application of the system's output align strictly with the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's established regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. A failure to do so could result in unfair admissions, reputational damage to the university, and potential legal challenges. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between raw data and its legally permissible interpretation within the context of the exam's specific rules. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's specific regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines. This means recognizing that the monitoring system's data is merely an input and must be processed and evaluated strictly according to the defined criteria for admission. The university's guidelines likely outline specific academic thresholds, character assessments, and other eligibility requirements that must be met. Therefore, the correct approach is to use the monitoring system's data as one piece of evidence to be assessed against these predefined, jurisdiction-specific admission criteria, ensuring no external or arbitrary factors influence the decision. This adheres to the principle of fairness and adherence to the established legal and regulatory framework governing the entrance examination. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the monitoring system's output, without cross-referencing it against the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's specific regulatory framework, is flawed. This approach fails to acknowledge that the system is a tool, not the ultimate arbiter of admission. It risks making decisions based on potentially incomplete or context-lacking data, violating the spirit and letter of the university's admission laws and guidelines. Another incorrect approach would be to introduce subjective interpretations or personal biases into the evaluation of the monitoring system's data. This directly contravenes the requirement for objective assessment based on established criteria and could lead to discriminatory practices, which are prohibited by the university's governing regulations. A further incorrect approach might involve prioritizing data from the monitoring system over other mandatory documentation or assessments stipulated by the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's framework, thereby bypassing essential procedural requirements. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a systematic process. First, clearly identify the specific regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines applicable to the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. Second, understand the purpose and limitations of any data-generating systems, such as the monitoring system. Third, evaluate all available data and documentation against the established admission criteria, ensuring strict adherence to the jurisdiction's rules. Finally, document the decision-making process thoroughly, demonstrating how each candidate was assessed in accordance with the university's legal and regulatory obligations. Question 20. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of undue influence being exerted on the admissions committee for the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam, particularly concerning applicants with potential connections. A specific applicant, who meets the minimum academic threshold but has a notable family member serving on the university's governing council, has been flagged. The committee is considering how to proceed with this applicant's file to ensure fairness and adherence to the exam's regulations. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? A. Conduct a thorough and documented review of the applicant's file against all published admission criteria, seeking any necessary clarifications from the applicant, and making a decision based solely on merit and adherence to the established requirements. B. Expedite the review process for this applicant due to their potential connections, prioritizing a swift decision to avoid any perception of delay or scrutiny. C. Forward the applicant's file directly to the university's legal department for an immediate assessment of potential conflicts of interest, bypassing the standard committee review. D. Approve the applicant's admission based on the assumption that their connections indicate suitability, without a detailed examination of their academic qualifications against the entrance exam criteria. Option A. Forward the applicant's file directly to the university's legal department for an immediate assessment of potential conflicts of interest, bypassing the standard committee review. Option B. Expedite the review process for this applicant due to their potential connections, prioritizing a swift decision to avoid any perception of delay or scrutiny. Option C. Approve the applicant's admission based on the assumption that their connections indicate suitability, without a detailed examination of their academic qualifications against the entrance exam criteria. Option D. Conduct a thorough and documented review of the applicant's file against all published admission criteria, seeking any necessary clarifications from the applicant, and making a decision based solely on merit and adherence to the established requirements. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough and documented review of the applicant's file against all published admission criteria, seeking any necessary clarifications from the applicant, and making a decision based solely on merit and adherence to the established requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student admissions under pressure. The admissions committee must adhere strictly to the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam's established criteria and procedures, ensuring fairness and transparency for all applicants. The risk matrix highlights potential vulnerabilities in the process, necessitating a proactive and principled response. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of the applicant's file against the published admission requirements, seeking clarification from the applicant if necessary, and making a decision based solely on the established criteria. This upholds the integrity of the entrance examination process, ensures equitable treatment of all candidates, and aligns with the university's commitment to academic standards. It is ethically sound as it prioritizes merit and adherence to rules, preventing any perception of favoritism or undue influence. This approach is also procedurally sound, as it follows the established framework for admissions, which is implicitly governed by the university's charter and the regulations pertaining to its entrance examinations. An incorrect approach would be to bypass the standard review process due to the applicant's perceived potential or connection. This would violate the principle of equal opportunity and could undermine the credibility of the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. It would also be ethically problematic, as it introduces bias and deviates from the transparent and merit-based selection process that is fundamental to academic institutions. Furthermore, such an action could be seen as a breach of the university's internal regulations concerning admissions procedures, potentially leading to disciplinary action. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the applicant without a proper review, based on a vague concern or assumption. This would be unfair to the applicant and could be seen as a failure to apply the established criteria consistently. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a departure from the professional obligation to assess each candidate fairly based on the defined requirements of the Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a systematic evaluation of the applicant's qualifications against the stated criteria. If ambiguities exist, seeking clarification from the applicant or relevant university departments is crucial. Decisions must be documented, transparent, and justifiable based on the established rules and ethical principles governing the Al-Qalam University Katsina entrance exam. The focus should always be on maintaining the integrity and fairness of the admissions process.